Deterrence AI, the leading blog in proactive security.
Okay, so you guys have been sending in some seriously interesting stuff for us to really dig into. And this time, well, we're diving deep into security deterrence
Oh, deterrents.
based on Robert Taylor's article.
Okay.
So we're going to try to, pull out the most practical and kind of like the most useful takeaways that you can like immediately start thinking about for your own organizations.
Yeah.
And, it's not just about like dealing with a security threat when it happens. It's about how do you make it so these things don't even happen in the first place, right?
Proactive security, absolutely.
Yeah.
So important. And that's really what Taylor's article highlights is that, security deterrence is a key part of any good security posture.
Right.
And it's all about making your organization less appealing.
Right.
You increase the perceived risks, you increase the effort for attackers, and you decrease what they could potentially get out of it.
Right.
So why bother?
Right. Make it more trouble than it's worth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we're going to dig into three main things from this article.
Okay.
The first is a layered security approach. Absolutely crucial.
Right.
The second is the potential of AI-driven security technologies. Really game-changing.
Okay.
And then, of course, the need for constant adaptation.
Right.
Because the threats are always changing.
Okay, so first up, paint us a picture of the threat landscape we're facing right now. Like, what does that even look like?
It's multifaceted. It's coming from everywhere. It's more, the more cyber attacks now. They're more sophisticated.
Right.
They're using a broader range of techniques.
It's not just like more attacks. It's that the attacks themselves are getting like way more clever.
The adversaries are refining their techniques.
Right.
And they're leveraging advancements in technology.
Right.
So generative AI, for instance, can be used to augment these attack techniques, and they're exploiting the complexities of these modern digital environments.
Right. So it's not just like brute force anymore.
No.
It's like they're using really clever kind of almost like
Intelligence?
yeah, intelligence infiltration techniques to get in.
Absolutely.
So it feels like the traditional ways that we've kind of defended ourselves are being really, really challenged by this new.
Yeah, the article mentions sophisticated attacks can operate in memory.
Right.
With minimal digital footprint.
Right.
So those traditional detection methods are really challenged.
Right. So it's like they're not even leaving the evidence behind anymore. It's like they're in and out, and you don't even realize it until it's too late.
Exactly. And how do you even react to that if you don't even see it?
Right. Yeah. And then you add in the fact that like where and how we work has changed so much.
This is the rise of hybrid work environments.
Right.
It's completely blurred those traditional perimeter-based security approaches.
Right.
You've got this distributed workforce.
Right.
So it's even more complex. And this is where deterrence really comes into play.
Okay, so in this increasingly complex landscape, how do security deterrents, like, how do they actually help us? Like, what's their main job?
So effective deterrents, they're a vital layer of defense, right?
Right.
They increase the perceived cost and effort for attackers.
Okay.
And they decrease the perceived likelihood of success.
Right.
They make your organization a less attractive target.
Right. So it's not just about like blocking them at the door.
Yeah.
It's about making it so they don't even want to try the door.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, why try to break into Fort Knox when you could just go to the corner store that leaves their back door open?
Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So attackers, they look for the path of least resistance.
Right.
So if you have a strong deterrent posture,
yeah.
you look like a much more difficult and risky proposition.
Right.
We got to go somewhere else.
Right. Yeah. It's all about making your company, your organization, the less appealing target, right? Yeah. So Taylor mentions 4 key categories of deterrence.
Yeah.
What are those?
Okay, so you need a comprehensive approach.
Okay.
You need to consider administrative, physical, technical, and psychological deterrence.
Okay, break those down for us.
All right, so administrative deterrence, think of those as your policies,
okay,
procedures, and employee training.
Right.
Physical deterrence, locks, alarms, surveillance.
Right.
Technical deterrence, firewalls, encryption,
right,
MFA.
Right.
And psychological deterrence, think of those as security awareness and visible security measures.
Okay, so let's get into some practical strategies, starting with administrative deterrence. Like, what are the foundational things you need to have in place?
So the article really emphasizes that it starts with clear and comprehensive security policies and procedures.
Okay.
These need to cover everything: how you classify data, how long you retain it,
right,
acceptable use, and consistent enforcement is key.
Right. So it's not just about having this document that says what you should do. It's about actually making sure that it's happening.
Absolutely. You're setting the rules of the game and you're playing by them.
Right. Exactly. Set those expectations.
Yeah, for example, clearly outlining the consequences for data breaches and actively monitoring for violations can really deter insider threats.
Right. Okay. So what else falls under administrative deterrence?
Robust access control mechanisms are crucial.
Okay.
So the principle of least privilege,
Right.
which means you give users only the access they absolutely need to do their jobs,
Right.
and role-based access control, or RBAC,
Right.
are key.
Right.
By limiting who can access what, you're minimizing that potential damage
Right.
if an account is compromised. And it makes it much harder for attackers to gain wider access.
Right. It's that whole thing of like need to know basis, right?
Exactly.
Like you don't need access to this, you don't get access to this.
Exactly.
So we can't forget about the people part of all of this.
The human element, absolutely.
Yes. So how does that fit in?
Well, regular security awareness training for your employees, that acts as a vital administrative deterrent.
Okay.
Taylor calls it the human firewall.
Oh, I like that.
So this training needs to cover things like creating strong passwords,
Right.
spotting phishing attempts,
Yeah.
best practices for handling sensitive data, and reporting suspicious activity.
Right. So it's really like training your employees to almost be like little security guards themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And a well-informed workforce, it's much less likely to fall victim to things like social engineering,
Right.
which is often how attackers gain their initial foothold.
Right. Okay. So last one on the administrative side. What about when things do go wrong?
So despite your best efforts,
Yeah.
sometimes things happen.
Right.
That's where having clear incident response plans and procedures comes in.
Okay.
So having well-defined steps for identifying, containing, eradicating, recovering from, and learning from those security incidents
Right.
really signals to attackers that you're prepared and you can respond effectively, and that can make them think twice.
Right. Okay. So that's a good look at the administrative side.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the physical deterrents.
Right.
Like what are some key examples here?
So physical security measures, they're all about those tangible barriers
Okay.
and increasing that risk of detection.
Okay.
So think robust locking mechanisms on your doors and windows,
Right.
security guards, patrolling video surveillance systems,
Okay.
and even something as simple as visible security cameras
Okay.
can be a huge deterrent.
Interesting. So even if they're not actually recording, just the fact that they're there.
The article mentions studies that show that even just having those signs
Okay.
or stickers can deter a certain percentage of burglars.
Interesting.
And then for more sensitive areas,
Yeah.
things like key cards and biometric scanners,
Right.
they add another layer of control, restricting access to authorized personnel only.
Okay.
And even simple things like well-maintained lighting and controlled landscaping.
Okay.
They can reduce hiding spots and make it harder for intruders to operate unseen.
Right. So it's kind of like security by design almost.
Exactly. Those physical measures are your first line of defense.
Right. Yeah, it makes sense. Okay. So now let's talk about those day-to-day kind of routines and operational protocols.
Okay.
Taylor calls these procedural deterrents.
Yes. These are the routines that contribute to overall deterrence.
Okay.
So a clean desk policy where you don't leave sensitive information out in the open
Right.
reduces the risk of data theft.
Right.
Secure disposal procedures for sensitive documents, like mandatory shredding.
Okay.
Another example,
Makes sense.
regular security audits and assessments, they send a message that you're constantly checking,
Right.
which can deter attackers.
Right. So it's showing that you're being proactive and you're always kind of one step ahead.
Absolutely. And encouraging employees to report any suspicious activity.
Okay.
Having clear channels for them to do so, that fosters a culture of vigilance.
Right. So it's not just about the technology and the policies, it's about that human element.
Exactly.
Being aware and being proactive.
Exactly. Early reporting can often lead to detection and prevention before things escalate.
Right. Okay. And the article has a table here. It's really useful, summarizing these practical deterrent strategies.
Oh, that's a good one.
So for administrative, we're looking at policies, access controls, training, and incident response plans, right?
Yeah.
And the main deterrent effect there is to establish clear expectations, reduce those insider threats,
Right.
increase security awareness, and signal preparedness.
Absolutely.
For physical, we're looking at locks, security guards, surveillance, biometric access, and the key effect there is increasing the risk of detection, creating those tangible barriers.
Yes, you make it harder for
Yeah.
them to get in.
Yeah, and then for procedural deterrence, clean desk policies, secure document disposal, regular audits, and reporting procedures.
Yeah.
And that helps to reduce the attack surface
Yes.
and demonstrate a proactive approach. Okay, let's shift gears a little bit.
Okay.
Talk about the role of technology in all of this. It's
Okay.
not just about physical barriers and written policies anymore, is it?
Not at all. Technology is absolutely essential for amplifying our deterrence capabilities.
Okay.
And Taylor divides it into what we might call traditional security technologies,
Okay.
and those powered by AI.
Okay, so traditional technologies, what are we talking about here?
So think about firewalls and intrusion prevention systems.
Yeah.
Those are still your first line of digital defense,
Okay.
preventing unauthorized access and blocking malicious traffic.
Right.
But they need to be configured properly,
Right.
kept up to date.
Okay, so you can't just set it and forget it.
No.
Yeah.
Then you have encryption,
Right.
which scrambles your data,
Right.
making it unreadable if it's stolen.
Okay.
So just knowing that data is encrypted can be a deterrent in itself.
Right.
And then there's multi-factor authentication, or MFA.
Yes. The bane of my existence sometimes.
It can be a little inconvenient,
Yeah, a little bit.
but it adds a significant layer of security
Right.
because it requires multiple forms of verification,
Right.
making it much harder to compromise accounts,
Okay.
even if they get your password.
Right. Yeah. It's that extra step. It's annoying, but it's important.
It is
And what about anti-malware software?
absolutely crucial.
Okay.
Detecting and removing malicious software,
Right.
creating a more hostile environment.
Right. So it's like having an exterminator come in and get rid of all the bugs.
Exactly. Makes it less appealing for the bugs to live there.
Right, exactly. Okay, so now the fun stuff, the AI-powered technologies.
Yeah.
This is where things get really interesting.
This is where we see a real step change.
Okay.
So AI-driven video analytics, they can analyze surveillance footage in real time,
Okay.
spotting unusual behavior that a human monitor might miss.
Right.
Things like loitering or unauthorized entry attempts, and it can trigger alerts or even initiate deterrent actions.
So it's like it's not just passively recording anymore.
No, it's proactive.
Yeah, okay. Interesting.
Then you've got AI deterrents or aid systems.
Okay.
They use AI to deliver adaptive verbal warnings to intruders
Ah,
based on their appearance and surroundings.
that's cool.
So imagine someone entering a restricted area.
Right.
The system activates flashing lights,
Okay.
delivers a customized verbal warning.
So it's almost like a virtual security guard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Creates a strong impression of an immediate response.
Right. Like someone is actually there watching.
Exactly. Powerful psychological deterrent.
That is very cool. Okay. What else?
Smart security lighting,
Okay.
motion-activated spotlights,
Right.
warning sirens,
Okay.
two-way talk capabilities.
Okay.
So you've got visible and audible warnings,
Okay.
and you can even communicate directly.
So it's not just about like scaring them off. It's about like actually being able to interact with them. That's really interesting.
And then there's preemptive security solutions
Okay.
that utilize automated moving target defense.
Okay. This sounds complicated.
It's like a network where the streets keep changing names and directions.
Okay. I like that analogy.
It continuously and automatically changes the attack surface.
Okay.
So things like shifting IP addresses,
Right.
altering network paths.
Okay.
It makes it much harder to plan an attack,
Right.
especially for those advanced persistent threats.
So it's like they're trying to hit a moving target.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
And then, of course, we have to secure our cloud environments.
Right. Huge. Yeah.
Cloud app security solutions.
Yeah.
They're essential,
Okay.
protecting applications and data,
Right.
specific controls and configurations,
Yeah.
deterring attackers who are targeting these environments.
Okay.
And the article also mentions that it's important to choose technologies that are secure and verifiable from the start,
Right.
and implementing controls like tokenization
Okay.
to prevent data compromise.
Yeah. So it's like you're building security and from the ground up.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've talked about these different categories in the technologies.
Yeah.
How do we actually put these into practice, like in different situations?
So deterrent strategies need to be tailored
Right.
to specific operational contexts.
Okay.
The article highlights hybrid work environments.
Right.
supply chain security,
Okay.
and cloud security as example.
Okay, let's start with hybrid work environments.
All right.
How do you keep things secure when everybody's all over the place?
So the blurring of those traditional network boundaries, that's the challenge.
Right.
So you need flexible and customizable access control technology
Okay.
that adapts to different occupancy levels and user groups,
Right.
provides granular control over who can access what, regardless of location.
Right. So it's like you need a system that's as flexible as your workforce is.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
And then unified security systems
Okay.
that integrate access control with things like EDR. Okay. And MDM
Right.
offer a more holistic view of security
Right.
and enable more coordinated responses.
Right. So it's about bringing all those different pieces together.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, what about supply chain security?
So increasingly important.
Right.
Implement strong security controls for any data shared with suppliers,
Okay.
including encryption and tokenization,
Right.
and conduct thorough security assessments of your manufacturers and suppliers.
Right. So it's about making sure that everyone in that chain is as secure as you are.
Exactly. You're only as strong as your weakest link.
Right, exactly. Okay. And lastly, cloud security.
So cloud environments require their own set of security controls and configurations,
Okay.
often beyond what the vendor provides.
Right.
So leverage cloud-native security tools,
Okay.
properly configure access controls,
Right.
implement DLP, data loss prevention,
Right.
and utilize cloud-based threat detection services.
Right. So it's about taking ownership of your own cloud security.
Yeah.
Okay, so this all sounds great.
Yeah.
But how do we even know if it's working?
That's the challenge, right?
Yeah, it's hard to measure something that you're trying to prevent from happening.
You can't really measure what doesn't happen,
Right. Exactly.
but you can look at indirect indicators.
Okay.
So monitor the frequency and severity of incidents over time.
Okay.
A decrease in successful attacks could suggest it's working.
Right.
You can analyze logs and alerts to track the success rate of attempted attacks.
Okay.
Are they being blocked?
Right.
Gather feedback from your security teams. What are they seeing?
Right.
And conduct regular penetration testing and vulnerability assessments.
Right. So it's about looking at those kind of like side effects almost.
Exactly. It's an ongoing process of assessment and refinement.
Right. Not just a one-time thing.
No, and the threat landscape's always changing.
Right.
So continuous improvement and adaptation is crucial.
Okay.
Stay informed about the latest threats and techniques. Evaluate new security technologies.
Okay.
Learn from incidents, both internal and industry-wide.
Right.
And regularly review and update your policies and procedures.
Okay, so to kind of wrap things up, what are the core takeaways from all of this?
Okay, so effective security deterrence.
Yeah.
It's not just one thing.
Right.
It's a comprehensive and integrated approach,
Okay.
combining practical strategies, administrative, physical, procedural,
Right.
with the intelligent application of traditional and AI-powered technologies.
Right. So it's about bringing all of those pieces together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a fundamental shift
Yeah.
from reacting to attacks to proactively preventing them.
Right. And it has to be tailored to your specific situation.
Absolutely. A threat-driven approach.
Right.
You need to understand the threats you face
Right.
and the adversaries who might target you.
And this is not something you can just like set up and forget about.
Absolutely not. Continuous adaptation and improvement are essential.
Right. Okay. So I think we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
Thank you so much for guiding us through this deep dive.
My pleasure.
I hope this has given you, the listeners, some valuable knowledge and some practical ideas to start thinking about.
Absolutely.
And to kind of leave you with a final thought to consider.
Okay.
You know, we've talked about these different layers of deterrence, the
Yeah.
physical, the psychological, the technical.
Yeah.
Which one do you think is most often underestimated?
Mm-hmm.
And what kind of impact could we see if we really made an effort to strengthen that?
It's a good question.
Yeah, so keep exploring this topic and really think about how you can apply these strategies to your own specific circumstances.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Security is everyone's responsibility.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks again for joining us,
Thanks for having me.
and we'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.